they do have this kind of, unexpected, idea that how come, you are a Taiwanese, but you are a Muslim at the same time. So what I want to do is to, basically cut that barrier. And, you no longer have to feel that you are some kind of a weird person for being a Muslim in Taiwan.
Welcome to Connected Podcast, coming to you from the heart of Taipei, in which we get personal on news and issues that connect us all here in Taiwan and around the world. I am Tomasz Koper. With me in the studio is Chloe Wong, and our guest today, Abdullah Cheng, who is an imam of the Taipei Grand Mosque. And together we'll discuss Taiwan's growing and changing Muslim population. So let me start with asking you something that I'm sure many of our listeners and our viewers are curious about. Abdullah Cheng. Now, for most people familiar with the name Abdullah and familiar with the last name Cheng, this might not be a typical combination of those names. So can you tell us how you got this name?
So first of all, let me introduce myself again. My Chinese name is Zhenping. And my Arabic name is Abdullah. So usually if I speak with a foreigner who is more comfortable with English and other languages, I would prefer to use Abdullah. But if I'm speaking with a Taiwanese, somebody who speaks Chinese, I would prefer to use the name Zhengping, which is more comfortable for people. So how do I have this name? So first of all, a lot of people might misunderstand that I may be a convert to Islam. So a lot of times if I meet with somebody for the first time, one of the first questions I get is, "Oh, how did you become a Muslim?" So I said, I was just born into this world, and I was already in a Muslim family. The second question I would get usually is, then, "Oh, okay, then does it mean that you come from a Hui family? Because, obviously Islam has a long history in China, and we have so many Muslims in China, and most of them are from the Hui ethnicity." So I said, "No, I'm not a Hui either. Actually, my father, he is, they come from a traditional Taiwanese family background, and my father, he became a Muslim later on his own decision. So that's why by the time that I was born, we were already in this kind of environment. So that's basically how I grew up. I was actually born in Saudi Arabia. I studied primary school in Belgium, in Brussels. And then later on in middle school, I was in Taiwan. High school, university, I was in Turkey. And after I graduated, I came back to Taiwan. And currently, I'm serving as an imam at the Taipei Grand Mosque. And at the same time, I come from a software engineering background.
So you have a very interesting history, like growing up in different countries. So could you walk us through like how those different experiences shape your identity, or how those living experience in different countries shapes you?
Yeah, so, one of the things that I notice every time I come back to Taiwan, like, usually during summer vacation, I will come back to Taiwan, and I really never felt that I'm a local Taiwanese. Every time I come back, and if I go to the convenience store, I go to Family Mart, I go take a bus, I don't understand anything they're speaking. They're speaking so fast. You guys know how Taiwanese people speak, and the Chinese that I speak, I learned it from my parents. So my parents, they always try to speak slowly. Every single character in Chinese, they try to pronounce it correctly. So that's how I grew up with. So when I'm speaking Chinese, people often misunderstand that they assume me to be like somebody coming from China. In terms of identity, I never really felt that I am really close to the Taiwanese people. Well, of course, after I settled down in Taiwan finally, after graduating from university, I start to feel more empathetic to this identity that I have, because I always felt that, I grew up in Belgium, I feel more like, a French boy. But later on, when I went to Turkey, I feel like, maybe, I'm more closer to the Turkish guys, as well. But after I came back to Taiwan and I start to understand that actually this background that I hold is very important to me, and that's something that a lot of people are very curious about. Especially when nowadays as an imam, and we do have a lot of interactions with people coming from all around the world, like literally from all around the world, and they are always very curious about the situation of Muslims living in Taiwan. So a lot of foreign Muslims, they ask me certain questions, but I don't actually know how to answer. So for example, what kind of traditional Taiwanese food do you guys have in Taiwan? And that's one of the questions that I couldn't really answer because, me as a Taiwanese, I lived most of my life outside of Taiwan. And even though I'm settled down here, most of the food in Taiwan that people consider to be traditional and popular, I don't know how they taste like because they are not halal.
Is there something you miss from Belgium or Turkey that you can't get in Taiwan?
Well, probably more from Turkey because I had more memories with Turkey. I lived there a bit longer. Of course, a lot of the food there, the weather, the culture there, I really appreciate it and I miss them a lot. Especially the kebab from Turkey. If you've ever been to Turkey, yeah, there were a couple of nice restaurants here in Taiwan too.
I don't know. I'm still yet to find a good kebab in Taiwan. Although after the recording, I have to ask you for recommendations. But can you tell us how you became an imam, especially since you said that your background is in software engineering?
I never ever expected or wanted to become an imam in the first place. Right after I graduated from university, I came back to Taiwan. I served in the military. What I was planning is maybe to go outside, maybe to go to another country, Singapore, Japan, and the US, to maybe work in a big software firm. But later on, I started to realize that there is a lot of things that I could do in Taiwan that I don't think many other people could do. Especially with my background. So even though I do come from a software engineering background, but since I had a lot of experience living abroad and especially living with inside, a big Muslim community in Turkey as well, I had some knowledge about Islam that I feel that is very precious and not very accessible to the people in Taiwan. If you're a Chinese speaker who doesn't speak any other language, or if you don't have a lot of friends from other countries, then I think it was very, very hard for somebody to be able to learn the true knowledge about Islam in that kind of state. So after I came back to Taiwan, I established my own website called Islam Taiwan, islamtaiwan.com. If you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And that's basically just a very simple website that has a curated list of all the halal restaurants, stores, places to pray. But more importantly, it has very, very precious information to learn about Islam. So, for example, there is the Quran translated in traditional Chinese, and some articles, Islamic articles for people to learn about. So I think that was the very first step for me to kind of slowly become recognized in the community we have in Taiwan. And, somebody just start to realize that, there's this guy in our community. He's doing some stuff for our community. He's building this website. Let's have him give us some speeches in our mosque. I said, okay, sure. I can share what I know. But later on, after I started giving some speeches, they realized, this guy, he knows how to talk. He can give some speeches to us. Let him, try to give the Friday sermons because, all the Muslims around the world, we pray at the mosque every single Friday. So, I never expected to become an imam. But I did fantasize that, okay, maybe if one day I become an imam, that probably is after I retire, like in my 50s or 60s. But I never, ever expected for myself to start delivering these sermons since I was 22. So that was kind of the start, and voila, that's here I am now.
Is that a typical, let's say career progression for an imam? After a career, they then retire and then they become imams, or?
At least from what I know, yeah. Actually, in many countries that have a lot of Muslims and especially like maybe Islamic schools, they do have this kind of phenomenon. Yeah, even yesterday I actually met some Turkish members of parliament. They're working in politics now, but actually they came from an imam background. So
Okay.
there is the other way around as well.
So you can go the other way.
Yeah.
When you said the Quran is translated into traditional Chinese, is it translated into modern Chinese, or is it more classical Wen kind of Chinese?
I see. There are different versions of translation. So it depends on who is the translator and when it was translated. So for example, the translation that I put on my website, it was translated by a Muslim named Ma Jian. So he was somebody who probably around 100 years ago. He did this translation. So that translation, we do have also multiple different translations, but among all these other translations, I personally feel that his translation was probably the closest to the modern Chinese that we speak, even though I have to say that it is still a little bit hard if you're, a Taiwanese youngster. It might still be a little bit difficult, but I think that's the one that we have that's closest to the common Chinese language that we speak nowadays.
So you feel it's better to have the text more approachable than more stylized and kind of lofty, sounding more like a religious text?
Definitely, because that's the point of the translation, right? Because the point of having a translation is for those who do not understand Arabic to try to understand as much as possible how the original language is like. So for example, in the English world, they keep on having the new versions of translation as well. So for example, one of the most common translations in the English language is The Clear Quran by Mustafa Khattab. He's I think I have also read many different translations of the Quran in the English language. I feel like his translation is one that is very, very easy for maybe a middle schooler to read.
Okay, well, speaking of approachability, besides your website Islam Taiwan, you also have a YouTube channel. So what are you trying to do through that channel? What are you communicating?
So I not only post videos on YouTube, but I also have on Instagram, on TikTok. What I'm trying to do is actually to kind of close the barrier for maybe a non-Muslim to Islam. So I know a lot of people, they already have a lot of interest about Islam, but they couldn't just make that step to come inside. So essentially what I'm trying to do is to bring the stories about the Prophet Muhammad, and make them actually understand that he is a human being with a mission, and that's what I want to show essentially. Like me, if I don't tell people, people will never expect me to be an imam in the masjid. So I would try to dress casually, try to not look the typical stereotypical Muslim, and to make people a little bit more approachable to Islam. So that's what I'm doing.
Speaking of that,
what you wear today
exactly, what are you wearing today?
Special.
So this is something that I usually wear. Now, like in the past, maybe I would have worn, a black suit. But nowadays, as I mentioned, I start to value more the cultural side of mine, traditional Taiwanese clothes. So this is something that I almost wear every single week during my sermon. I wear different types, different styles. So this one, I actually just got it this week. There's a Muslim auntie. She has a store near Dihuajie, and she's selling a lot of traditional Taiwanese clothes. And this one, it's almost like specifically made for me. This one, for example, it has a kind of a Islamic element in it and blended with the local, Taiwanese, style. So what I want to show by wearing this is to show people that, being a Muslim doesn't mean that you have to wear Arab clothes, because that's one of the stereotypes that people have. Actually, in Islam, the principle is you have to look nice, you have to look good, and have to look clean. But how do you want to look clean? How do you want to look nice? That's totally dependent on your culture. And this is what I want to show to people. Being a Muslim, it doesn't mean that you have to throw away your own culture, your own identity. But this is within our culture. It is something that is already inherently Islamic. So why not wear it?
Yeah, and I also observed that you have built like some interesting tools, digital tools for Muslim community. For example, the food ingredient scanner and also the zakat calculator.
Yeah.
Can you briefly introduce what kind of concept is that zakat? What is that? And also, how do you realize there is a need from the Muslim community?
So the website itself, I would kind of call it as a Swiss knife for Muslims living in Taiwan. Like all the different toolkits that you would need as a Muslim living in Taiwan, I would try to put it as much as possible on my website. So the things that you mentioned, for example, a zakat calculator, the zakat basically is an amount of money that you have to donate to specific categories of people, like for example the poor, once every year. So you have to take 2.5% of your property and basically donate it to those people. So a lot of people, they have different assets. Maybe some of them, they have investments. Some of them, they have, cash, some money in their bank account and so on. So they just put in all those money, and then the calculator will just show them how much you have to donate. That's the kind of tool that we have. And also we have, for example, the Qibla direction, which is basically showing you which direction is Mecca, while you're traveling, you don't know where to pray and so on. So those are the kind of tools that we put there to help people live an easier life while they're staying in Taiwan.
Well, you mentioned that one of the things you want to do is explain stories about the Prophet and things that people might not be familiar with. But I assume a lot of people here in Taiwan do have certain ideas about Islam and about Muslims. What are some of the ideas, prejudices maybe, that you've encountered here in Taiwan, both positive and negative, about your religion?
Obviously, there's a lot of prejudice, and sometimes it's not coming out of animosity or trying to have cause arguments on purpose. Sometimes it's just how they were taught at schools. So I think a lot of the things that people might assume is how much element of Arabia, in terms of the culture, there is tied to that religion. I mean, because we're not that familiar with the culture in the land of Arabia, so that's why a lot of people might assume a lot of the things that they do over there is just because of their culture, because of the weather, because of how people used to live. Women covering the hijab. People might assume that maybe this is something that because people used to live in the desert, so in order to protect themselves, that's why they used to wear all of this. But there is a historical context in terms of how this rule of wearing the hijab even came in. I mean, a lot of people might just assume that, the first day that Prophet Muhammad started to preach Islam, suddenly we have this rule. But actually, we have to know that Prophet Muhammad, he preached Islam for 23 years. And actually, this rule about the hijab came in like at least after 15, 16 years after preaching. So what did he do in the first 15, 16, 17 years? What did he do back then? So that's the thing that I want to emphasize on. Maybe a lot of people, they just focus on the rules, the consequences that Islam has brought in, but they do not really understand why do we have these rules in the first place. So that's kind of I want to bring people back to the history of the initial phases of the life of the Prophet. What did he do in the beginning? So another example I would like to give is the prohibition of alcohol, because we Muslims, we don't drink alcohol either. And there's a very interesting narration by one of the disciples of Prophet Muhammad. He said that if the prohibition of alcohol came in the beginning of Islam, I swear I wouldn't be able to stop drinking alcohol. Because he knows that if he didn't have those bases, the basic understanding about Islam, who is God, why does he need to worship God, and so on, he wouldn't be able to understand why he would follow these rules in the first place. So this reflects that you really need to have this strong foundation of Islam in the first place, understand who you're doing this for, who is Allah, who is God, why you should worship him. Then after you got all of these understood, then you can proceed to following these rules. They will make you a stronger person.
Is that prohibition against drinking alcohol ever a problem for you personally?
For me, not a problem at all.
Taiwan is not a very heavy drinking culture, so I guess it's a good place for people who don't like alcohol, I would say. Well, let's talk about your community. So I imagine that these days, most of the people who come to the Taipei Grand Mosque, most of the people that you serve, were not born in Taiwan. Taiwan has been seeing a lot of migrant workers from countries like Indonesia, for example, the biggest Muslim country in the world. Tell us about the kind of people that you see that come through the door of the Taipei Grand Mosque.
So, for example, if you come every week on Friday during the time of the prayer, you would see so many people coming from so many different countries. So I would estimate every time we come to the mosque, there will be at least people coming from 30 different nationalities. Of course, majority would be Indonesia, but of course we also have people from India, Pakistan, even sometimes from Philippines, South Africa, Nigeria, and so on. So you really would see people from the most west to the east. It's true that nowadays, if you come to the mosque, I would say the people with a Chinese face like mine is among the very small minority. But actually, when I used to be, very young, like less than 5 years old, when I used to come to the mosque, I would see a lot of, Chinese Muslims. Actually, all of them were Chinese. By Chinese, I mean like they actually migrated from a part of China and then they immigrated to Taiwan. That used to be the case. Even the culture we have in the mosque was a Chinese culture. But today you would see that you would probably see more elements of the Indonesian culture and Indian Pakistani culture. So for example, during the month of Ramadan and when we were breaking our fast, you would eat Indian cuisine in the mosque. You would no longer probably eat those Chinese cuisine anymore. So this is kind of the current situation we have.
So what are the main reasons of the earlier Chinese-speaking Muslim started to fading away? What is the main drive of that?
I think there might be many different reasons. From my own personal perspective, I think that perhaps many of the early immigrants, the Chinese Muslim immigrants, when they came to Taiwan, they actually didn't have a strong foundation when it comes to the religion of Islam. And after they settled down here, I mean, most of them, I assume that they were very young in their age as well. So after they come and settle down here, and then they get married with the locals and, they start to move on with their life. And maybe because the mosque was very far away from them as well, they didn't really have a strong attachment or a strong reason to, get connected with the community anymore. So maybe the older generation, maybe they might be still sticking with the religion, but the later generation, the second, the third generations, it's very, very hard to see them still here. And especially, I think Taiwan, I would say, is a very, very comfortable country that you will see a lot of fun and entertainment around you that I think people might very easily lose track to, why am I still adhering to this thing that my parents were still believing? So this is actually a challenge that I believe all Muslims who are born in a Muslim family, they would have to face at some point in their life. They have to go and reflect, why am I walking on a path that my parents were walking on? Like, why do I have to be Muslim in the first place? That is something that even me personally, I have gone through this stage of reflection, of thinking, am I a Muslim just because my parents are Muslim? Or is it just a culture? Or is it something that is meant for me to work on myself?
Yeah, I think that's the case in any religious household. Like at some point you start questioning whether that's your choice or your parents' choice. It happened to me as well. I was brought up Catholic. While we're on the subject of Taiwan's Muslim heritage, I want to bring in another voice from AbdulMaalik Tailor, who is a Muslim tour guide in London, and he gave us, during our show, an episode on halal tourism. He gave us his thoughts on Taiwan's Muslim heritage. Let's give that a listen.
AbdulMaalik, as we saw in that film, Taiwan does have a growing Muslim population and a heritage of its own. How can that be? How can Taiwan use that, like you've been saying, to boost its visitors, its Muslim visitors, or give the halal-friendly experience?
I think in terms of as I say, the Muslim narratives, they really need to be promoted in any brochure marketing strategy, is to have maybe even international influencers coming there, showcasing snippets of the history, as well as you may want to, what some places, for example, are doing, where they have the first mosque, they actually put in a government plaque there saying this is the first plaque. That in itself can be an attraction. And I know certainly when we discovered London's first public Eid prayers of 1894, we managed to convince the local authority to put up a plaque there. That in itself has become a tourist destination as well. So many people are going there, taking their selfies, this, that, whatever, put it on the map, etc. So that in itself, spreads the message as well. But, from here, what I've noticed from the documentary, you have heritage here as well. You also have what's been suggested, which I noticed wasn't actually included, was Admiral Zihi, who actually has been suggested to have actually gone to Taiwan Taiwan as well. So you've got his legacy, what was actually left there as well. But you have different parts in Taiwan history that is Muslim history as well. And I believe if you actually put the two together and produce like a guide in terms of Muslim heritage, that would be most helpful. And on the back of that, you can put your plaques. You can actually then bring in the influencers to spread the message through social media, and that would actually be a lot more helpful in terms of the marketing strategy of promoting Muslim heritage, and actually realize that it's not just the destinations where we're perhaps commonly used to finding Muslim heritage, like Bosnia, Uzbekistan, Turkey, but yes, in Taiwan, in this small country, it does still exist as well, and it goes back many centuries.
Okay, so a few things there that AbdulMaalik mentions. He mentions Admiral Zheng He, who was a Chinese explorer. He was a eunuch who was tasked with kind of exploring or finding sea routes to Middle East, or what Europeans call the Middle East, the Arab world in Africa. However, to a lot of people, his connection with Taiwan is not maybe particularly strong. Well, what I'm curious about is what would be on your list of places or things related to Taiwan's Muslim heritage that you would showcase, that you would sort of invite foreign influencers to look at and to highlight abroad? If I wanted to learn more about Taiwan's Muslim heritage, where would you take me? What would you show me?
Right, just at the top of my mind, I think there are two places that I come up with. One is actually the Muslim graveyard in Taipei. This is a graveyard that has a long history, even though it's not that long, but many of the prominent Muslim figures that were living in Taiwan, they were all buried at this site. So I think if we could bring somebody who is interested about the history of Islam in Taiwan, I think that's one of the places that we could definitely bring. And the other thing that I think would be more entertaining is actually the Burmese street. Okay. We have a Burmese street in Zhonghe, Nanshijiao. That street, it has a lot of, it's a food street basically. It has a lot of restaurants that are still managed by many of our Muslims who came from Burma, even though they originally came from the province of Yunnan, and they are still living there. And actually that area, that district, is where most of the Chinese Muslims still live today. Back then, after they migrated to Taiwan, they just settled down there and they're still living there. So that's an area I think it's very nice to explore. You'll be able to taste some Burmese cuisine and kind of an Indian mix in that as well.
Yeah, I think that is a very special area in Taipei, that we have a community there, Muslim migrant and also earlier migrants community there. So can you tell us what are some of the unique challenges being a Muslim minority in a country like Taiwan? And I guess some of them might abandon their faith if being a minority in a more secular country.
I mean, especially for all of those people who are coming from Muslim majority countries like Indonesia and then live and work long term in Taiwan, which is a Muslim minority country.
Is forming a community like that in Nanshijiao very important to the community?
For me, maybe that part of Taipei is just a very interesting part to look at, even though I wouldn't say it's something that is extremely important to the core of sustaining the community. I think it's just something that's interesting for people to know. But in terms of the challenges, I do understand that many of the foreign Muslims, maybe somebody who comes from a Muslim majority country like maybe Pakistan or Indonesia, when they come to Taiwan, I think the top challenges that they would face is definitely about food, about places to pray. But honestly, for me, I don't really consider these as very, very big challenges. I think in terms of food, even if you cannot find halal restaurants, we got vegetarian restaurants as well. Right. Even if you don't get vegetarians, you will not die out of hunger. In Taiwan, you got 7-Eleven every single street. Even if you don't want to look at 7-Eleven, it's going to appear in front of you. So It's almost impossible for you to die out of hunger there. So I don't think there's much I could complain. Yes, there are there are some room for space for improvement, but I think that's something that we are already working on. There's a lot of people who want to invest in the halal economy in Taiwan. But I think something that is maybe more important to show to people is this the true knowledge about Islam. One of the examples I would give in terms of the food that we have in Taiwan. Yes, even though we do have some halal restaurants, more and more halal restaurants nowadays in Taiwan, but most of them are still foreign cuisine. So for example, you have an Indian cuisine, you have Indian, Pakistani, Indonesian cuisine, but you don't really find like local Taiwanese halal cuisine. A lot of foreign tourists, when they come to Taiwan, they want to try something local, like Taiwanese food. But still, after they come here, they still have to eat shawarma, they have to eat biryani, and so on. I mean, yeah, still, it's very tasty. I personally love this food, but it's just that we also not only to cater these foreign tourists, but at the same time show the Taiwanese people that Islam is not tied to a specific culture. If you make bubble tea and you follow the Islamic principle of not adding anything that is prohibited in Islam, that is a halal bubble tea. So people might not understand, even the water that you drink, we call it halal. Halal basically means permissible. So as long as you're able to produce, the food or whatever it is, while still adhering to the principles of Islam, that is something halal. So I think that's something that I want to really make people understand, that this concept of halal or this Muslim lifestyle is not as far as you might think. It's actually closer than you think. Your everyday life, actually many aspects of it are already halal. It's just that you didn't realize it yet.
So it's hard to imagine that no one has had the idea to maybe slightly adjust the way they prepare food and just make it halal.
Yeah, actually, it's quite easy. Like sometimes I feel like I cannot really give it an example right now, but sometimes when I go to the supermarket and look at a food, it doesn't have anything to do with pork or or maybe just an oil that they use.
Right.
If they just make a small tweak and just change the ingredient, we would be able to eat it. But they just maybe didn't realize that there is this market of Muslims who could eat it.
What about workplace settings? Does those Muslim migrants workers face any challenges working here in Taiwan as a caregivers or working in the factories?
Yes, so I do hear a lot of stories, sometimes complete as well, from these migrant caregivers, workers. Of course, I don't believe that it's the majority or it's the common case, but some of them, maybe they would have some challenges when it comes to wearing the scarf,
right,
or even praying 5 times a day on time. Some of the their bosses wouldn't allow them for some reason, and at the same time there's this language barrier that they're not really able to explain to their boss. This is something that's part of our faith. This is something that we cannot negotiate, and so that's why some of them, they ask me to make some videos on TikTok just to explain, whenever it's time for, the Eid celebration after Ramadan, they're just asking me, hey, Imam, can you just make a small video, just a short video, just to explain to my boss that I need to go out and celebrate this event with my families and friends. So this is something that's very common. And unfortunately, yeah, they do have a lot of challenges that, me personally, thank God, I haven't had to experience these kind of challenges, but that is something that I do believe it requires some empathy from the Taiwanese people to kind of try to understand why do we have this kind of demand in the first place. And actually, I would say that all of us Muslims who are willing to pray 5 times a day, we are also willing to work extra if it means to take some time from the work to pray. We would be willing to work extra to take that time back as well. So at the same time, praying doesn't really need a lot of time. Some people, when they use the bathroom, they take more time than praying as well. So honestly, it's just a matter of communication, to be able to really let them understand, the prayer of Islam is not like the prayer of other religions that you might take some time or need some materials. It's very simple. 5 minutes, you'll be done with it.
Well, I assume you also get very positive reactions from people. Like, for example, do you see Taiwanese people convert to Islam. Is that part of your community?
It's very often, often. Yeah, I would say on average, maybe every week we do have somebody.
Wow,
yeah,
every week.
Every week. And it's very interesting that I think a lot of youngsters are becoming Muslims in Taiwan, and especially like, middle schoolers, high schoolers, university students. These are very common as well. And I would say even like there are more high schoolers than university students. And I don't know what's the exact reason behind, but I'm assuming, I think it's kind of funny, but I feel that, the high school students, they're very, very pressured with their university entrance exam. They start to reflect on life. Why am I doing all of this in the first place? But when people get to university, maybe they just start to have fun. They forget about life and, they don't think that much. But yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing. It wasn't the case like this, I think 10, 20 years back. We didn't have that many young people deciding to convert to Islam. But of course, at the same time, we do have a lot of cases, and I would say even majority of cases of conversions are Taiwanese males who want to marry with an Indonesian female. So many of them are caregivers or migrant workers. So because they need to get married, that's why they have to become Muslims as well. So that's very common.
You mentioned about there's a lot of Taiwanese getting married with Indonesian migrants. So how do their families react to these conversions, especially for the Taiwanese families?
Okay, so from my observation, I feel like they're mostly quite open with it. I haven't seen a lot of clash between the groom and their own family members. But in terms of outside of marriage, let's say those middle school students, high school students who decide to convert to Islam, I also observed that actually their families are also quite okay with it, even though if it's somebody who maybe is over the age of 20, 30, and they decide to become Muslim, I think sometimes they might have some problems. Maybe there's a generational gap that maybe the older generation are, a little bit less tolerant with their children changing their religion. But I feel that the new generation, their parents, their families are generally quite okay with it. I usually, whenever there is somebody who becomes a Muslim, I always ask them, "Oh, is there any problem with your family? What did your parents say?" Actually, they do tell their parents as well, and they say, "Oh, sure, no problem." Just
It always surprised me how open to all kinds of religions the Taiwanese society is relative to many other societies that I've come to know throughout the years. And is this making sort of what you do here in Taiwan easier or more challenging? Because I can also see how people don't really commit to one religious practice long term. Do you see a lot of people who come in and convert later kind of drop off and stop practicing?
Generally speaking, from my own experience, I haven't really met people who converted to Islam and then later on they left the religion and changed to another religion. Usually maybe they become Muslim, but later on maybe they just don't appear that often in the mosque. But yeah, I think generally speaking, if this person who has converted to Islam, they are physically near to the mosque, then usually it's easier for them to keep up with their faith at the same time, because a lot of times it's actually about companionship. After they become a Muslim, they actually don't have a lot of knowledge about Islam, and at the same time they're just living alone, just living with their family who are not Muslims. So that's why they don't feel any change in their life. They don't, on one hand, they don't actually know some of the fundamental knowledge about Islam, but at the same time, they're not really living that lifestyle at the same time. So maybe at the end, they just feel like a label, oh, I just become a Muslim, but what exactly does being a Muslim mean? That is something that I think many of them didn't really figure out without living that way.
When I produce the episode about halal economy, we actually produce a mini documentary about Taipei Grand Mosque. When I do some research online, I found that actually Muslim community has a long history of emphasizing these global connections. For example, Taipei Grand Mosque is also built with the donations from the Middle East countries. So how would you describe this sense of global solidarity and connection today? Are there
Do you
any?
still feel it today?
Yeah,
It's
or-
been a few decades since the Grand Mosque was constructed, right?
And also, are there like any challenges to maintain those solidarity in today's context?
So this kind of Muslim brotherhood we call it, it's always existent, and of course maybe not as big as building a mosque, even though there are ongoing discussions on how we can build more mosques in Taipei or in Taiwan. Generally speaking, we do have these kind of conversations and projects going on. But even aside from building mosques, I mean, a lot of resources that maybe are financial resources that require some money. This is something that we always have a lot of things to share with each other. Even from Taiwan, if there's something that we can share to some other places, we're always also sharing as well. So what are some of the things that we have that other places don't have? It's Islamic resources in Chinese. Because that is something that is honestly very, very scarce. I mean, from China, basically, it's really hard to access almost anything digital from China. And what else do we have from Taiwan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore? But at least in Taiwan, we do have, at least, for example, my website, we have, these contents. And also I have my lectures. Also, maybe we have some articles, booklets that are in Chinese. And this is something that a lot of Muslims who are living outside, maybe in the UK or in Europe, sometimes they meet some Chinese people and they want to share something in Chinese. They don't have the resources, so maybe they would, get some help from us as well. So it's a win-win situation always. We're always trying to help with each other. When I just recently went to Malaysia and had a conference with Muslims coming from all around the world, from Australia, from Fiji, from Canada, and so on. And we're just sharing all the things that we're doing and see what we can do to help each other. This is something that's very common. Still doing it.
Well, we're slowly running out of time, but I do want to ask you about your hopes for yourself and your community in the future. I mean, you're already an imam. I mean, where do you go from here?
So I do have a big vision, you could say, while I'm still alive and living here in Taiwan, which is to try to normalize Islam in Taiwan. I do understand that a lot of times, especially our new converts, when they become a Muslim and they need to identify themselves as Muslim, people will be shocked. They say, how come you become a Muslim? They do have this kind of, unexpected, idea that how come, you are Taiwanese, but you are a Muslim at the same time. So what I want to do is to, basically cut that barrier. And, you no longer have to feel that you are some kind of a weird person for being a Muslim in Taiwan. Because nowadays, if, like, for example, in a classroom, somebody says, oh, I'm a Christian. Oh, well, that's very normal. When you say that you're a Muslim, whoa, how come you're a Muslim, So that's something that I'm working on, trying to achieve in Taiwan. So hopefully, I think that is something that's, possible to achieve.
Yeah, and also as a Chinese from Malaysia, I also thank you for translating those information and knowledge, so it has become more accessible to people like me.
Thank you, Abdullah Cheng, Imam at the Taipei Grand Mosque, for this very fun, very interesting, and very enlightening conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And to our viewers and listeners, what aspects of your country's heritage do you feel should be highlighted more? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, do check out our main show, Connected on TaiwanPlus. You can find it on our YouTube channel and the TaiwanPlus website. Until next time, I'm Tomasz Koper.
I'm Chloe Wong.